Society loves a good, pathetic tragedy. They look at a 103-year-old woman living completely alone and expect a ghost. The world pictures me fading away in a terrible, giving up beige living room. They think I just sit in a dusty armchair all day long. They imagine me staring out the front window with sad, watery eyes. They assume I am desperately waiting for my busy children to call me. Well, those folks are entirely wrong. Solitude is not some heartbreaking tragedy. It is absolutely not a flaw you need to fix. My lovely house is not a depressing waiting room for the end of the line. It is definitely not a transit station before they shove me into a sterile administrative cage. This house is an impenetrable fortress. Living alone after 60 is the ultimate glorious privilege. You finally step up and take back control of your own life story. I am 103 years old. My name is Mabel. I refuse to play the poor victim for anyone. I do not wait around for pity or phone calls. I rule my own private kingdom now. Today, I will reveal my 5 eccentric solo rules. I use these strict, sassy boundaries to protect my peace. These wonderful rules keep my brain sparkle alive and well. They transform my quiet home into a perfectly curated retreat. I do not tolerate any unsolicited advice in this sacred space. I let my adult children handle their own messy lives. My house simply means my rules. I built this beautiful sanctuary for my own joy. You can do the exact same thing right now. You really must remember one very important truth before we begin our list. You cannot have a happy ending to a miserable journey. Women are taught to be small and accommodating. We shrink ourselves to fit into society's neat little boxes. We smile politely when our joints ache. We nod quietly when young folks speak to us like toddlers. We let our families treat us like fragile glass figurines. That nonsense stops today. I call my strategy the grand unshrinking. I created these eccentric solo rules to aggressively defend my daily joy. I do not ask for permission anymore. I simply inform the world of my choices. I want you to grab a notebook right now. Write these rules down immediately. We are going to build your fortress brick by brick. Rule number 1 is throwing out the rule book on how a house should look. Women spend decades building perfect little museums. We arrange stiff throw pillows like precious art pieces. We dust fragile ceramic birds every single Sunday morning. We keep a flawless living room for absolute strangers. I call this the fantasy life. We wait for phantom guests to arrive. We want them to admire our hard work. Our adult children also love to micromanage our spaces. They walk in without knocking. They rearrange the heavy wool rugs. They tell us to clear the clutter for our own safety. They want our homes to look like sterile hospital waiting areas. Well, I completely reject that ridiculous pressure. You must embrace the absolute freedom of your own space right now. My house serves my joy alone. It does not serve their judgmental eyes. I tore out the pristine beige carpet in my dining room last year. I dragged 20 heavy bags of potting soil straight through the front door. I turned the entire space into a messy indoor greenhouse. Dirt gets absolutely everywhere. I water my orchids daily. I let the excess water drip right onto the hardwood floor. The lovely smell of damp earth fills the whole house. I leave my dirty gardening trowel right on the fancy velvet sofa. My daughter came over last week. She almost had a massive panic attack. She gasped loudly at the muddy footprints near the television. I just smiled at her. I offered her a fresh garden tomato. I know a brilliant woman in Florida. She put a blow-up jacuzzi right in the middle of her living room. She watches her evening game shows from a bubbling pool of warm water. She does not care about potential water damage. She does not care about neighborhood property value. She cares only about her own immediate physical comfort. You spend your whole life following strict decorating rules. You finally reach an age of absolute freedom. You can break every single rule now. Your home is your private playground. Fill it with weird things. Make your heart sing loudly. Rule number 2 is dietary anarchy. Society constantly tries to medicalize our basic human habits. The health industry wants older folks to eat on a rigid military schedule. Our kids panic constantly. They worry if we skip a formal hot lunch. They threaten us with terrible lectures about proper nutrition. They complain about our daily protein intake. They buy us chalky vitamin shakes. They demand we drink them at exactly noon. I find this relentless policing completely exhausting. You must claim your absolute dietary freedom instead. I have zero interest in domestic friction anymore. I never have to ask a grumpy husband about his dinner preferences. I never have to chop tiny carrots for ungrateful toddlers. I experience the ultimate joy in my own kitchen now. I often make one giant pot of lentil soup on a Monday afternoon. The rich smell of garlic and onions fills the air. I will happily eat that exact same soup for 5 consecutive days. I do not care about culinary variety. Sometimes I decide to have a giant bowl of buttery popcorn for my supper. I sit in my favorite chair. I get sticky salt all over my clean shirt. I listen to the satisfying crunch in the quiet house. Other days I wake up very early. The sun is not even up yet. The kitchen floor feels ice cold on my bare feet. I walk into the dark room in my fluffy slippers. I take a leftover piece of chocolate cake out of the refrigerator. I stand right over the stainless steel sink at 7 in the morning. I eat that cold cake with my bare hands. I let the sweet frosting stick to my fingers. I do not even use a ceramic plate. I just rinse the chocolate crumbs down the drain. I dry my hands on my pants. I go about my lovely day. There is no one here to judge my chaotic choices. I protect my brain sparkle by removing all the boring mealtime rules. You spent 60 years cooking perfectly balanced meals for other people. You washed millions of greasy pots and heavy iron pans. You earned the absolute right to eat a cold hot dog at midnight. Your kitchen is not a sterile health clinic. It is a magical place for your personal cravings. Rule number 3 is wearing whatever you want and sleeping wherever your body feels good. Society expects old women to wear stiff blouses and sensible slacks. They want us to hide our sagging skin under heavy wool sweaters. They tell us to sleep flat on expensive orthopedic mattresses. They claim this rigid posture fixes our aching bones. I stopped listening to those absurd rules a decade ago. I claim absolute thermostat sovereignty in my house. I keep the temperature at a glorious 80 degrees all winter long. I walk around in a fuzzy purple bathrobe with giant holes in the pockets. I wear mismatched fuzzy socks. I leave the bathroom door wide open all day and night. Nobody is here to complain about the sudden draft. Nobody is here to judge my messy morning hair. My lower back absolutely hates my expensive traditional bed. I wake up feeling like a crushed aluminum soda can. Every single joint streams in fiery agony. So I sleep right in my ugly brown leather recliner. I placed it dead center in the living room. My son hates that chair with a burning passion. He says it looks like a dead bear. He constantly worries about my spinal alignment. He brings over glossy, colorful brochures for adjustable hospital beds. I just toss them straight into the blazing fireplace. I find absolute physical peace in that ugly, worn chair. I wrap myself in 4 heavy patchwork quilts. I fall asleep watching old black and white Western movies on the loud television. I do not care about proper modern sleep hygiene. I care about waking up without wanting to cry. You must stop suffering for the sake of looking normal. Wear your ugliest comfortable clothes. Sleep wherever your fragile body finds actual relief. Rule number 4 involves interspecies socialization. The world gets very quiet when you live completely alone. The heavy, thick silence can swallow you whole if you let it. Society thinks an old woman talking to herself is a terrible tragedy. Adult children panic immediately. They hear you muttering in the dark hallway. They instantly assume you are losing your cognitive grip. They start whispering frantically about expensive memory care facilities. Well, they completely misunderstand the entire situation. I am not losing my sharp mind. I am just creating my own chaotic emotional weather system. I refuse to fade into the quiet, boring background. I talk loudly to my giant rubber plant every single morning. His name is Arthur. I tell Arthur all about my strange dreams. I wipe his broad green leaves with a damp cloth while gossiping about the town mayor. I also have a fat orange tabby cat named Barnaby. Barnaby and I hold very serious, detailed conversations about the local neighborhood drama. I ask him a complicated question. I answer for him using a deep, silly British accent. My youngest daughter caught me doing this last month. She looked absolutely horrified. She dropped her heavy leather purse right on the floor. She asked if I forgot how to use the modern telephone. I told her Barnaby is simply a much better listener than her husband. You are the ruling queen of your personal fortress. You get to dictate the daily sound of your own kingdom. Fill your beautiful empty space with loud noise. Talk directly to the painted walls. Sing old jazz songs loudly to the silver toaster. Argue with the arrogant television news anchors. You absolutely do not need a human audience to validate your existence. Rule number 5 is my absolute favorite strategy. I call it the strict iron gate policy. People deeply love to pity a solitary old woman. Nosy neighbors constantly peek through the front window blinds. They bring over terrible, soggy tuna casseroles wrapped in cheap aluminum foil. They tilt their heads with sad, pathetic puppy eyes. They ask if I feel frightened all by myself in this massive house. My adult children also use the classic guilt trip strategy. They call the landline and sigh heavily into the receiver. They frame their suffocating control as deep concern for my physical safety. They strongly suggest selling my beautiful fortress. They want to move me into a highly supervised senior living community. I use the gray rock method to destroy that toxic pity. I become as totally boring and unresponsive as a literal gray stone in the dirt. I do not justify my daily choices. I do not explain my weird routine to anyone. A nosy neighbor asks a probing personal question. I just stare blankly at her face. I give a flat, dry, one-word answer. I take her terrible cold casserole without smiling. I close the heavy, solid oak door right in her shocked face. I slide the shiny brass deadbolt firmly into place. That firmly closed door is not a sign of sad, lonely isolation. It is a massive, glorious symbol of my independent power. I am not hiding in fear from the outside world. I am actively protecting my precious limited energy from relentless energy vampires. You must build a massive, invisible, emotional wall around your fortress. Stop explaining your beautiful, peaceful solitude to people committed to misunderstanding you. Let them think you are very strange. Let them think you are a grumpy, crazy old witch. Your job is not to make them feel comfortable. Your job is to fiercely protect your sparkling brain until the very end. Living completely alone is not a sad, tragic sentence. It is the most magnificent reward for a beautifully exhausting life. You spent decades cleaning up terrible messes for other people. You spent thousands of hours worrying about ungrateful teenagers. You constantly held your breath to keep the absolute peace in your busy household. Ah, you can finally exhale right now. You can take a massive deep breath in your own quiet hallway. You earned every single second of this glorious selfish time. Do not ever apologize for building a strong private fortress. Do not feel guilty for locking the heavy front door. You are the absolute ruling queen of this specific patch of earth. You alone decide who enters your sacred, peaceful space. You decide exactly what time the kitchen closes. I want you to do something very specific for me today, darling. I want you to close this glowing screen right now. I want you to stand up slowly from your comfortable chair. Walk right-eyed over to your favorite big window. Look out at the wide, beautiful world outside. The world is spinning very fast out there. People are rushing around with terrible, stressful anxiety. They desperately chase silly, impossible fantasies. Well, you are perfectly safe inside your sturdy brick walls. You survived all the hardest parts of your long story already. You outlived the bad bosses and the rude neighbors. You survived all the ridiculous societal expectations. Now you simply exist in pure quiet joy. Go make a giant cup of hot herbal tea. Leave the dirty mug right on the expensive coffee table. Turn on your favorite old jazz music very loud. Dance terribly in the middle of the kitchen floor. You are absolutely free.